Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. We are your hosts for this week's episode. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach.
My name is the Uncle Junior, and I go by the Consistency Coach.
And we are your coaches for Coach's Corner. As always, like I tend to say, if you're here and you're not going to take this information and use it to your advantage so that you can become a better person for the people that you know, love, and care about, then you might be in the wrong place. However, if you want to be impactful and you want to make an impact in other people's lives as well as your life, then you're in the right place at the right time. You are destined to sit here in front of us and listen to the coaches of Coach's Corner. Myself, Dwayne Dwyer, the Mindset Coach, and my partner, the Uncle Junior, the Consistency Coach. We show up here every week because we want to give you the best version of the information that we have, because we desire for you to be the best version of yourself. So that being said, let me speak to my brother, the Uncle Junior, the Consistency Coach. How you doing today, brother?
I am doing well. I'm doing very well. I'm in a good mood. My mind is clear. All of those good things, man. I am very excited about the conversation tonight. I am very excited to see and hear what the chat has to say. And even before then, man, how is Coach doing?
I'm good, brother.
Moving right along in the year.
You know what? It's funny you say that. First of all, to answer the question, I'm great. I'm doing good. I have a lot of high expectations. Well, not so much as expectation. I have appreciation first, but then I'm looking forward to the things that are going to come out of 2025, not just for myself individually, but for Coach's Corner, for anything that we collectively put our hands on. And I'm not just necessarily talking about what's on the screen or what's behind the screen. I'm just talking about kind of like what we're going to talk about today. I'm talking about relationships. I'm talking about all of the above, nothing being exempt. So I'm excited about what 2020 has to offer everybody. And I'm just looking forward to be a part of the success stories. I want to hear it. I bring all your success stories here to Coach's Corner because we want to celebrate you. And that's where I'm at.
You said you're looking to hear what other people have accomplished and done in 2025, and I think that's good. And I'm wondering if that lines up with my thoughts that I was thinking about this morning. So when I was at the gym this morning, I was thinking about something came to me, and I saw something. I had heard something on a podcast, and it was talking about mastery. And, one of the things that I've been thinking about for a while is like, man, I got a bunch of hobbies, but it's like certain hobbies I've just kind of stepped my toe into the water. I haven't really dived into the hobby. So it was like when I was thinking this morning, it was like, I wonder if I should start mastering some of these hobbies. Um, and just learn a lot more than just surface area. I have some RC cars that I know surface area. I can change basic certain things, but I don't know in depth. The same thing with photography. It's a hobby, but I don't know in depth. I haven't mastered those two hobbies, but it's just, it was just something I was thinking about this morning.
No, I get that. And it's funny for those people who are listening. I want to make sure that you understand what is understood when the term mastery is used. And it's a term that is used a lot when it comes down to a higher level of degree, because you're supposedly a master at that level of degree, right? But we all know that that's not true unless you practice whatever that degree is. But mastery, in essence, in short terms, is just like the what is it? The consistent ability to do a thing without the use of conscious efforts. So I'm doing a thing, and it goes beyond habits, right? A habit is a thing to what I'm doing. I'm not necessarily thinking about, but I'm not doing it flawlessly. But if we start talking about mastery, mastery is a thing to where you do it flawlessly without the use of conscious efforts. It's like the old saying, like amateurs practice a thing until they can get it right. Professionals practice a thing until they can't get it wrong. Well, that's the level of mastery that we're talking about here. So when it comes down to RC cars or whatever the case may be, sure, absolutely. By all means, man, choose one and then just dive deep into that. Yeah. Anytime that you would devote to another hobby, take it away from that and put it back into that hobby right there. Because, like I said, I'm looking forward to like giving people their flowers for their success. I am genuinely looking forward to hearing other people's success story. because I don't think we do enough of that. Like we spend a lot of time focusing on ourselves, but at the end of the day, if we help enough people get what they want, then eventually you'll get what you want, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you achieve a thing, I want to know about it because I really made a big deal about you doing a marathon. Like
Mm-hmm.
regardless of what your metric of success was, it's not like I'm saying that that was totally irrelevant to me because it was relevant to you. It was also relevant to me. But I wanted to focus on the fact that you did the marathon because
Mm-hmm.
that gave me an entry into celebrating you, regardless of whether or not you achieve your goal or not. I was going to celebrate you anyway. And I think
Yeah.
that's the thing that we should do, especially when it comes down to relationship. So again, long-winded, bro. I do apologize, but that's just how I see it.
Are you good, man? And that's we keep segueing. It's like the third conversation we done had to include the one we had backstage that keeps segueing into tonight's topic. So we might as well get right into it, man. So I'll just do a slight introduction, but I ain't gonna I'll just leave the screen like this. I just want to say that, for everybody, um, relationships are key. They are like some may say it's like the heart of our lives. They bring us joy, challenges, and the opportunity to grow. Tonight, Coach and I are going to be exploring how to nurture the connections that matter most, how to communicate, rebuild trust, and to show up for the people we care about. All right. So with that being said, folks, we're gonna dive right into it. But I'm not gonna propose the first question of the night. Instead, I am going to ask Coach a question. And I just want to know from Coach, tonight's topics is strengthening relationships that matter most. So what are some of the relationships that matter to you? You don't have to necessarily name names if you don't want to, but you can talk around it if you need to, if you don't want to expose anybody. But what are some of the relationships in your life that matter the most? Oh, actually, pause, hold up. Before we do that, we got to acknowledge the chat. I apologize. Just want to say welcome every single person who is here tonight. We appreciate you for being here. We appreciate all the support that we get from you each and every week from on both platforms. So, with that being said, please hit that like button, share, hit the bell, all those different things so you can be informed when we come out with more content. All right, back to the show. Coach, what are some of the relationships that matter to you the most in your life right now?
So I like the fact that you took that break and addressed the
Hmm.
chat because that's exactly where I was going to go. Like
Yeah.
I can't. I'm not making this up. Like I believe relationships that matter the most to people are the relationships that they spend time with.
Mm.
So that said, for me, the most important relationship, if you know me, is my relationship with the Most High. That's my number one primary. I spend more time talking about Him. I spend more time talking about His laws, His statutes, His commandments, how He has constructed a pathway for us to have a fulfilling way of life. And because I spend more time talking about Him, I'm spending time with Him by that same token. Um, I think when we start looking at other relationships outside of that, obviously relationships that you have with a significant other, that whether if you're married, that should be the next relationship that matters the most. Then from there, you look at relationships that you have with family members, like your parents, siblings, whatever that looks like. The relationships that you have with friends, I don't take those and put one above the other. I think the relationship with family and friends kind of sit on the same plateau. They're equal. Um, because at the end of the day, all family does not behave like family, and all friends don't behave like friends. I'm just being honest with you. So that kind of helps us to understand it. But to me, I have to go back to who I spend the most time with. That generally tells like the relationships that matter the most. So if I spend time talking with you in this um, platform, like some people see this and they're like, well, you don't really know these people, so you don't really care about these people. Like, no, that's not true. Like if I take the time to put in the energy and effort, thought effort that is, to project a project that has the ability to help somebody in any shape, form, or fashion, that actually means we care. Because we could be on here doing some outlandish stuff. We can be playing rap music in the background, and you can have all different. Y'all seen some of the stuff out there on social media. Well, that stuff isn't helping you. We can be talking about what happened last night on some TV show. Okay, great. That might be fun, but how does that really help you? So when you look at stuff like that, we spend time. We spend time with our audience. Why? Because we care about our audience. That means that they are very important to us. If we spend time on the phone with a person with any length of time, that means that person is important to you. Like I have to go back to the amount of time that you spend with a person, because you spend that amount of time with that person because that person is valuable to you.
Yeah, I agree. I think the amount of time you spend with these people is important. Mm. And I think that may include coworkers, because even though that those may not be relationships that you want to have outside of work, those relationships matter too. There's nothing like being on a team with a crappy person, or having a bad relationship with someone else on the team. So, you know, there was something that I didn't really think about until you started talking. I know you didn't mention that, but I think that sometimes co-workers, because I think we look at relationships that matter the most as the relationships that we want to have, or relationships that we favor, or relationships that we want to have with specific people. But the relationship that you have with your boss is important. The relationship that you have with your coworkers is important. The relationship that you have with your nieces and your nephews and cousins, all of those relationships are important. And I know that in relationships, there are twofold. Coach has his responsibility, I have my responsibility. So I'm gonna go down the list. You mentioned the motel already. You kind of mentioned spouses, if you have one. So I have one. So she's on my list of one of those relationships that I consider to be up at the top. This relationship is a good one. This is a relationship right here between me and you, which is twofold. So I have a responsibility because we co-host this show. So that's the business part of it. We also have, I'm with you on your show on Friday night, supporting over there as well. So so we have conversations at least twice a week, sometimes three or more times a week. So having a personal and business relationship, what I mean, so far for us have been good. Sometimes people say you can't work with your friends, but we didn't start off as friends. We started off as um we kind of did. We didn't, but we did. We started off having a long freaking conversation about a lot of the things that we had in common. So, and then it grew to where we was on podcasts and shows together to now, we're spending at least 2 days a week together having conversations. So that's another relationship. You mentioned the chat and the supporters. That's a great relationship that I value too, because it's different when you have no one watching versus when you have 10, 12 people in the chat that is being engaged. It's a very different atmosphere. It's I would compare it similar to being on stage and having to speak, and or being a comedian and you're upstage and no one's getting your jokes, no one's being attentive, versus people who are engaged, people who are laughing, people who are not on their phone. So those are just some quick three that I kind of wanted to share, kind of talk about with you. I think it's time to get into the topic, because we're already at 14 minutes already. So if you ain't got nothing else, man, I'm gonna jump down to the first one.
I think my something else is going to be discovered in the questions to come. So I'm gonna hold off.
Okay. All right, here we go. First question of the night. What are the morals and principles that guide your life, and how did you develop them?
But that was the number one relationship that I talked about.
Mm-hmm.
That relationship helped me to. Well, let me back up. Initially, I got my moral and principles from my mom. Through the childhood development stages, and then those morals and values and morals and principles were fine tuned as I started. discovering what the actual Bible is saying to me. And so as I continue to unpack, morals and principles become refined. And so in the development of them, they're practiced in real time with these in these relationships that we talked about. One of the things that I believe wholeheartedly is that these morals and principles reflect not just the value of that relationship, but it also reflects the meaning. And so when we look at the meaning, like I know you mentioned coworkers, and I'm not against, but it's a reason why I didn't mention coworkers, because the reason why that relationship exists is because I made an agreement with the company first. After making said agreement with the company, then I connected with the people who made the same agreement that I made.
Mm-hmm.
So our relationship is rooted in the core values of the organization because the organization defined the morals and principles of each coworker within that organization. So when we look at those relationships, when we look at relationships for coworkers or whatever that looks like, ideally we carry the same morals and values because the core principles of that company define them. Ideally, we should have had those very similar morals and values before we took said job. And that is the reason why we took said job because we had aligned morals and values. And so, for those people who display those morals and values in the job setting, those are the people that I end up having better relationships with at work. Sure, I got to have a working relationship with you, but at the end of the day, I can have a working relationship with you and only spend the amount of time that the job requires. So that's kind of like what I'm getting at. In the space of morals and principles, something must teach it, something defines it and refines it, and then it has to be practiced. When you practice it, that is more refining that is happening. So I think that incorporates the developmental process of those morals and principles in our life.
Mm, I like that. If I'm going to be specific and give out, some morals and principles, I'm going to say something that works for me is discipline and consistency. Um, I'm not going to talk too much about consistency, but I am going to hit on discipline. And the reason why I'm not going to talk too much, well, I would say this for both of these. Actually, you know what? I want to go with two different ones. I want to go with uh, integrity and honesty. I want to go with integrity and honesty. And the reason why I wanted to switch was because I think it's to I want to hear more about what you said after I say what I said. And it's kind of to what you're saying. So when you look at integrity and honesty, we grew up in the church, and we were taught that we're not supposed to lie. Mom taught us things, dad taught us things. We learned things in the church when it comes to honesty and integrity. However, I still lied, I still stole, I still did these things. It wasn't until I became a certain got to a certain level of maturity in my life to where I kind of started applying those things. So I don't really know. I know where they started. I don't always know how I developed. Go ahead. Go ahead.
You're reading, you're creating a conversation on a different topic. You know that, right?
Am I?
Yeah, you're in living by your core. And
Ugh.
the first question for building bridges was what makes a relationship truly fulfilling.
Ugh.
That's why I kind of got thrown for a loop, and that's what made me bring in the meaning thing. I think you can still keep that. Well, I don't know because it's up to you. You
Ugh.
still might be able to keep that same question. I don't know.
Mm, I am. I'm trying to think. Because now I just went. I just changed it. So
Okay,
these are I'm back on the other questions now.
it happens, bro. We human.
All I got to do really is just take out that whole part when I bring the question, because everything else up there was about strengthening relationships. So, yeah. All right, this gonna
I'll
be
tell
the
you what.
first.
Let's just start with that first question.
This one,
Yeah, let's just start with that one because
okay.
I think that this question here really shapes how your conversation is going. I
Mhm.
think we'll be fine.
All right, all right, Coach. Here we go for the first question of the night. Actually, pause. I don't want to say that. All right, here we go with the question. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. What makes a relationship truly fulfilling and meaningful? This should be
So
good. And in the chat, please feel free to answer this question because I want to see what they got to say too.
I think this is a good question for starters. Pause. Hold on. I got sneezing. Oh God.
Yeah, and I want to see how many people in the chat. I don't want to say superficial, but say,
Ooh,
I'm interested to seeing what the chat has to say. But
this
what
ought
you
to
got?
be good. I'm gonna be a little
Mhm.
slow roll as they type their responses because I really want to see
Okay.
it as well.
Yeah.
Um, as I'm looking at this question, I really love this question, right? But for me, I want to invert it, and I'll tell you why. Because I can't be fulfilled unless there's meaning.
Mm.
So when it comes down to relationships, a relationships must be meaningful first. In order for a relationship to be meaningful, it has to have a meaning. So if I can now have meaning for my relationship, then the relationship is meaningful. And within the scope of the meaning of said relationship, I am fulfilled because I am exercising what I tend to call, well, I mean, I didn't make it up, but I am exercising responsibility and accountability. And I think a lot of times we conflate the two because we think they mean the same thing. Okay. If said relationship has meaning, then I have a responsibility to the meaning based upon my role in said relationship. Okay. So, what does that really mean? Well, I go back to the job because that's easy to understand because a lot of us are job focused. So, if my job has a job description, I have a responsibility to the description of said job. Okay. The person I'm in relationship with, they have responsibility to the description of said job. That's why I believe the relationship must first have meaning. Now, accountability comes into the place when you look at me and look at what I agreed to according to said relationship and look at my job description and I'm not performing said job description to standard. So you come to me and say, "Hey, coach, can we talk real quick?" Yeah, man. Well, based upon the job description, this is what you said you was gonna do. Yep. But right now, bro, you kind of, you know what I'm saying? Like, can you step your game up a little bit? Well, that's an accountability metric. We're accountability partners. He's not scolding me. He's having a conversation with me based upon his observations. A lot of times, what we say, I'm accountable for my own behavior. No, you're not accountable for your own behavior. You're responsible for your own behavior. Another person has to be an accountability partner so you can even know whether or not you're even displaying the level of behavior that you agree to display. So I think all of that becomes important to understand because at some point there is an understanding of accountability to and accountability for. My supervisor at my job, he I must give an account for my expression of the job description. If that's the case, now I am responsible for my job description, and he is the judge of said thing. So we have to kind of look at things differently, and we can talk a lot more about responsibility and accountability later. But when it comes down to relationships being truly fulfilling and meaningful, it must first have meaning first. Once it has meaning, then it can have fulfillment because anything other than that is fleeting and superficial.
Yeah, and I think having a understanding about what true fulfillment is important too, because when you switch that, it made me start thinking about being fulfilled. And what I started thinking about was, well, it seems like people do the opposite. They meet somebody, they are fulfilled, but are they really fulfilled? And then they move on, and then at some point the relationships becomes a lot more meaningful for them. Some people, the relationship is not really meaningful to them until they get married, and then they say, well, now it's meaningful. When I get married, then I'm going to start doing this. When I get married, then I'm going to stop doing these things. So I think, when you look at this going the way it is, um it seems like it is bass backwards. I know it says it's not in order, but the way it's written, you would think fulfilling then meaningful, but putting the meaningful and then the fulfilling afterwards makes a lot of sense too. And the kind of, for me, what makes a relationship truly fulfilling is and meaningful is, I think, first of all, the relationship is with, you have both parties who want to be in the relationship. First of all, I think that's a key component. I think another component is that, um, there is respect on both sides of giving to the other person from both parties. And I think that the relationship, for the most part, you get what you need out of the relationship, and that's the fulfilling part. So between me and coach, what I need from a relationship, just a couple of things real simple, is that sometimes when I call, he be able to pick up, that he's respectful when we have conversations, that he keeps up his end of the bargain to the agreement that we have when it comes to coach's corner. So the relationship is meaningful, and that's even the reason why we were able to fulfill coach's corner, and come on here and do this every week. It's because the relationship is meaningful. Had the relationship not been meaningful, then there's no way that, we could have the fulfillment, and being able to come here every single week and be able to do this. We'd be like a lot of the old rock and roll brands. We'd be broke up. Some of the old R&B groups. So.
I'm agreeing with that, and I think to your point when you made mention that some people seek fulfillment first, and
Hmm.
then fulfillment lead to meaning, I think
Hmm.
that's problematic because
Yeah.
what I'm now doing is I'm rooting the meaning in me being fulfilled. Therefore, I am creating a recipe for you to fail. You will fail, I guarantee it,
Hmm.
because your responsibility now is to me being fulfilled. That was the reason why I got in a relationship in the beginning. So that's why I say what I say. The meaning has to be there first. That's why when we start looking at different relationships in the order of precedence, my number one order of precedence in relationship is always with the Most High. Therefore, what I've learned there, what is taught there, defines meaning of relationships. So for people who can be respectful of that, because that also defines responsibility, well,
Hmm.
now they're respectful because that's their character trait. I don't have to worry about them being disrespectful because at the end of the day, they're more focused on, maintaining their first priority of relationship, which is with him. So they don't come in relationship being disrespectful, seeking personal gratification, seeking to be fulfilled before defining meaning and all those different things. And because that exists first, meaning exists first, now fulfillment is available and fulfillment at that point become long-term and lasting.
I like it. I remember some show ago we talked about something about relationships, about how people sometimes can be in the house with somebody and not speak for days and weeks. That communication piece. So how can communication break down or build difficult, difficult on purpose, difficult relationships? How can communication break down or build difficult relationships?
I think this becomes kind of like an extension of what I just said, right?
Hmm.
Um, because that first relationship defines who I am,
Hmm.
then it also defines how I speak and engage with people. Some people appreciate the fact that I can be very direct when need to. Some people appreciate the fact that I can be compassionate when the time presents itself. In the space of communicating with someone else, that is your opportunity to display what that first meaningful relationship looks like. So, communication in a relationship from that perspective can build, not only build, but it becomes foundational to a relationship. On the other hand, If I don't have that number one relationship, then generally, in most cases, my number one relationship becomes a relationship that I had with my parents and the things that I learned over there and how they communicated with one another and so forth and so on. Good, bad, or indifferent. Maybe their number one relationship was with him and they kind of relayed his teachings to me. If it was not, they just communicated the way they communicated and they just cope with being in each other's presence. And if I think that that's a thing, that becomes the way that I do things. And then the practicing, the trial and errors of that throughout space and time kind of refines the way I communicate. So, in that aspect, I may be communicating through the lens of how I feel in the midst of things. Well, that in turn, I won't say difficult, but that can make it very challenging because my perspective is not rooted in facts, it's rooted in how I feel about those facts. And so, because I'm displaying or relaying the raw emotion without analyzing anything that goes along with it, it becomes challenging to you because you're trying to figure out what the devil are you talking about. And there becomes the challenge that exists in relationship. But again, going back to that thing that defines meaning for you in the relationship, that should get you to the point to where you communicate honestly and openly with said partner, and said partner can actually listen and hear what you're saying, and listening to the words without having a I would say not necessarily projecting the feelings of how they feel about what you're saying, but just trying to understand why and how. How do we get here? How do we fix it? Whatever the case may be. So they become more inquisitive as opposed to judgment. They become more compassionate as opposed to forgetting all the times that they needed somebody to become compassionate with them. And so communication to me, again, is foundational, but that foundation of communication comes from that meaning. So the meaning must exist for communication to exist, and that well, not for communication to exist, but for meaningful communication to exist. And
Mm.
therefore, now meaningful communication exists in a relationship. You have communication to where it is respectful, it is kind. Again, not nice, don't have to be nice, but kind. It is considerate. It is all of those things that we kind of tie to what we believe relationship is. Because without that, what you really have are two people existing in space and competing for what they can get out of it.
Yeah. I'm looking at this and I'm looking at breaking down communication into two parts. That's effective communication and ineffective communication. And if you apply that to both of these, that's what outcome you're going to get. So if you apply ineffective communication to a difficult relationship, it's not going to build it. It's going to break it down. If you apply effective communication to a difficult relationship, it could possibly help it. Now, the thing about it, relationships, is that it's still up to both people. So I could still use effective communication with coach and trying to say, hey, look, brother, you know, every week you ain't got your show topic. You know what I mean? And you don't put everything out until 30 minutes before the show. Now we having a difficult time in the relationship because someone is not holding up their end of the bargain. And even if I use effective communication and send text messages and notifications and emails and stuff like that, I am still at the limitation of the other party, But at the same time, I do think that there is an opportunity or a chance that if it's a meaningful relationship for both parties, that if you use effective communication on a difficult relationship, it can build it. I have been in relationships with people I've been in difficult relationships, and I've we have been able to put aside some of those differences,
Mhm.
and a lot of it had to do with communication. And a lot of the things that we were able to communicate, it ended up being perceptions about certain things, and not they were not necessarily based on facts. So communication is key to difficult relationships, easy relationships, and everything in between.
Can I ask a question about the question though?
Yes,
Like,
sir.
how would you define a difficult relationship? Like, I know, like,
Hmm.
everybody see the term difficult relationship. Like, yeah, I've been in difficult relationships, but what is a difficult relationship? I'm just curious
Mm.
for the
I
person.
think it's I think it's probably types. I think a difficult relationship is one that can be challenging. Um, and it don't necessarily I don't think it necessarily has to be a negative thing. I think you can be in a difficult relationships and not be negative. I think you can be in a difficult relationship and it be positive. I was in some difficult relationships and they were positive. They were with leaders who
Yeah.
forced me to grow. So I think a difficult relationship can just be something that can be challenging.
So I'm glad you said that just now.
Mhm.
I was in relationship with leaders that forced me to grow
Mhm.
because I'm going back
That's
to the
hard,
root.
brother.
I, I,
Hard.
trust me, I get it. Right.
Mhm.
I go back to the point of relationships must have meaning.
Mhm.
If relationships have meaning, then where's the difficulty exists? Because
Mhm.
when you like, I'm assuming that the example you gave was an army example.
Mhm.
Well, the relationship at that point had meaning. The
Yeah.
the army gave that relationship meaning. Well, the only reason for me, and I'm speaking for me now, the only reason I struggled with that relationship back then is because I was not adhering to the army.
Mhm.
And so it was all about how I felt pertaining to what they were saying. How dare you talk to me like that? Do you know who I am? Do you know what the
Mhm.
results I get, bro? You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like if we was on the streets, you wouldn't be talking to me like. So
That's
it was
hard.
that. I'm not gonna lie, it was that mentality.
Mhm.
Once I got that out of me, once he helped me to get that out of me, that
Mhm.
relationship not it went from being challenging or difficult to actually being a very meaningful relationship. Still, yet to this
Mhm.
day, I can pick up the phone and call him. Hey, man, what's going on? And we have
Yeah.
great conversation. I think a lot of times, and I'm not rejecting the fact that there are some people in certain places that have certain positions of authority that mismanage that position. I'll say it that way.
Correct.
I'm not rejecting that. But by that same token, I'm still in this relationship by choice. Because and I'm using simply a job per se. Because I can easily go get another job. In fact, I should be looking for another job while dealing with, by managing this relationship in real time. But then there are other relationships that go outside of the scope of profession, and that's
Mhm.
family members. And I'll be even more direct. I'm not talking siblings or cousins or stuff like that. I'm talking parents because I know some people exist in relationships when they have difficulty, and I'm gonna use this term, getting along with their parent. But still, yet I go back to where I was in the beginning. The relationship must be meaningful. And if the relationship is meaningful, there should be no difficulties. There should
Mhm.
be nothing challenging about this relationship. The issue is that one party or both parties have not yet defined the accurate meaning of said relationship. So I
Mhm.
just wanted to ask that because I know that some people exist in spaces like I know some people who go to work right now and they exist in like emotional turmoil from the time they work in the door and the time they leave because at any
Yeah.
point in time said leader can say something or do something or whatever the case may be and just wreck their whole day.
Yeah.
So again, I do apologize, but I'm just curious.
Yeah. And I think that last part that you said, I think, this is a little nugget for the leaders out there. I think you have to know your subordinates when you're leading them too. You can't treat all of your subordinates the same, because like Coach mentioned, I could take a soldier, I could take Coach up there, I could put him in front of the formation, I could smoke him for 30 minutes in front of everybody and embarrass him. Coach get right back in formation and be good, ain't like it ain't nothing going on. And I may take my wife Shell and I may put up in formation. I smoke her for 10 minutes and she distraught and she can't function for the next month because I embarrassed her, So I think it's very key that when we are leaders, that we take a good look and understanding who our population is and adjust our leadership accordingly. So, got a couple more questions, man. It's a good one. Because some people don't like to do this, good or bad.
That's
What is
fine.
the role? What is the role of forgiveness in relationships that matter?
Well, I will start this. I think this goes back to what I was talking about responsibility and accountability, right? When we look at relationships that matter, and to me, all relationships matter, just being honest. Um, when I look at my role, when I look at the role of forgiveness in those relationships, it is a responsibility. I know somebody kind of cringe when I say that because in my mind, in the mind of that person, like, well, I don't think I should have to forgive everybody who's done something to me. Well,
Mhm.
then the question is twofold. Do you recognize the fact that the person you're in a relationship is human? I'll start there, which means that humans make decisions, and sometimes those decisions are not good decisions. That's for
Mhm.
starters. Everybody is subject to that. I don't care how good of a person you think you are, you have made bad decisions in your life. Secondly, is the relationship meaningful? If the relationship itself is meaningful, then it makes room for them to be human. And going back to the meaning that was established for a relationship to me, forgiveness was not a suggestion, it was a commandment. So now, when you go back and define it, if thy brother trespass against you, rebuking is a commandment, rebuke them. If they repent, forgive them. That's a commandment. And because I define relationship through the lens of those things, through the lens of what the Bible says between Genesis and Revelation, then that means in the space of relationship, my responsibility is to address behavior when I see it, rebuke them, and then if that person can find it in their heart to recognize, take a be accept accountability. I'm sorry, accept accountability for what is being told, forgive them. So the role is clearly defined. It's non-optional.
So the role is to forgive.
The role is for me,
Yeah.
for people who believe like me. The
Yeah.
role of forgiveness in relationship is that it's a requirement for a person who accepts their behavior as a wrongdoing and then ask you to forgive them.
I can disagree, and I honestly don't have anything to add because it's simple answer. The role of forgiveness in a relationship is to forgive when it comes to forgiveness. And I think forgiveness and like you said, people are human, man. People make mistakes. People are not perfect. People are going to mess up. And the thing about forgiveness is that a lot of times, in most cases in life, we're gonna we're gonna find ourselves on both sides of the of this coin. You know, we're gonna wrong some people, and we're gonna want to be forgiven for what we did to those people. And there are gonna be some and vice versa. So I ain't gonna add too much more to it. I think I'd be beating a dead horse, but again, the role of forgiveness in relationships that matter is to forgive. Now, in relationships, and I'm gonna speak specifically about couples, right? Um, I'm married, you were married, I was in a previous relationship, and there's a lot of what people say give and take in relationships. You know what I'm saying? And we've talked about equality, we've talked about balance on this show. You know, feel free, chat, or anybody else out there watching, go back and look at some of our previous videos. Um, but how do couples balance giving and receiving within their relationships? I
Uh,
wonder if in your answer the manipulation of love languages. Um, Never mind.
I'm not gonna do it. I'm not gonna do it. I promise you
Okay,
I'm not gonna do it.
okay.
But what you said is exactly what I was thinking previously. First and foremost, we need to understand that balance and equality is not the same.
Mhm.
If we recognize that balance and equality is not the same, then what we should do, I'm going to say it that way, what we should do is be more of a giver than a receiver. Both parties. If both parties focus on the responsibility that they have, which is giving, giving is a metric of responsibility in relationship. What do you give? Well, that's pretty much defined by the relationship. You give effort, you give attention, you give advice, you give suggestions, right? You give well, you can't give time because you don't own
Wow.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't give you time
Yeah.
because I don't own time. But what I can do is prioritize where you sit within the time that I do have. So balance is not equality. Equality is a fallacy when it comes down to interpersonal interaction. And if we focus, that's the word, if we focus more on giving, then it would never be a bartering system within the space of relationship. Giving and receiving in relationship can put us in the mindset of bartering. I did this for you, therefore you should be doing this for me. That's bartering. You do that when you go to the store. I want said cup, therefore I give you money to pay for said cup. That's bartering, right? But because the relationship has meaning, and this person that I'm in relationship with is valuable to me, because this person is valuable to me, I give. My giving is a expression of the value that I see in you, the value that I experience when I'm in you. When you give to me, I don't look at the value of the thing because I value the person. I value the giver more than the gift. So whatever you give me, if you shown like applying any gray matter whatsoever, whatever you give me, I receive it and I appreciate you for giving me that thing. So now in a relationship that exists like that, two people who focus on giving, and I did not say go out and spend $1,000 on your mate just because whatever. I'm not going to get into the details of that. But what I'm saying, giving, you're muted, bro.
I was just gonna say Valentine's Day in 10 days.
That's fine. Hey, that's fine. Because a lot, listen, to that point, don't people realize that sometimes in the minds of most people, the things they purchase is just a thing to check the block? It doesn't mean that they value you, it just means that they don't want to hear you complain.
That part.
I'm just
Sips
saying.
tea. Mm-hmm.
It's I'm sips tea. I'm just saying. If I'm doing a thing because I don't want to hear you complain, that does not define the fact that I value you. That defines the fact that I don't want to be in this emotional tornado that's going to come if you don't receive. But then the
Mm-hmm.
question becomes, why do you portray that type of behavior when you don't receive because you expect to receive? Who told you that you were supposed to receive anything on February 14th anyway? February 14th ain't that important. Stop kidding yourself. Another
Mm-hmm.
conversation for another day, though.
Can you give it to him on February the 15th when everything get
I sure
half
enough,
off?
I sure enough would. I will gladly do so. Um, Giving and receiving is the space of relationship, right? Organizations who sell goods, they have a giving, right? That happen. They're giving you said good. You're paying for said good because you find value in said good. That's a version of giving and receiving. That's more of bartering. But again, the reason why you're paying for it is because you value the thing that you're paying for. I don't want you to value the thing that I'm giving you. Appreciate the thing that I'm giving you. Value the person that gave it to you. And I think when we do that, I think that kind of changes the perspective of relationships. Too many times, and I'm telling you from a person who knows from experience, too many times you're getting relationship with people who value the thing that you do for them more than the fact that they value the fact that you are the person who did it. So it's not about the person who did it, it's the fact that they did for you. So that person will go find a relationship with anybody who does something for them. And the sad part about it is they'll put it out there first, and therefore that person now has the metric to be in relationship for you with you, and they'll do those things because that's what you want. Both people are wrong. So we got to
Wrong.
understand this, man. The giving and receiving thing is huge, but we got to put this right here in its proper perspective. No such thing as equality, right? Balance is not equality. Balance means that I have the proper perspective of what giving and receiving is in the space of relationship.
Um, I like all of that. I'm gonna keep mine real short and sweet. I think. Um, how do couples balance giving and receiving within their relationships? By not keeping score. Now, I'm just going to look up at the ceiling because I know Coach or nobody in this chat has ever kept score in a relationship
Wrong,
when it comes to anything.
wrong for coach. Wrong. When I was young, I used to keep score all the time.
I used to keep score. I've done X, Y, Z. I've done it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times. You've only done it twice. Like, yeah, I was a guy who's in a relationship used to keep score of what I did. So and that's why I say, how do couples balance giving and receiving within a relationship? By not keeping score. And this goes back to what Coach was talking about. When I'm giving And I'm giving the value. I value the person, and that's why I give. I'm not giving because it's February the 14th or December the 15th. I mean, December the 25th. You got to get my birthday, December the 15th. Make sure you get me something for my birthday. I'll be 50 this year. But just kidding. But
I'm gonna get
yeah,
your birthday.
bro, I hope you here on my birthday.
I remember. I didn't forget. Hmm.
Yes. All right. Shout out. Everybody stay tuned. More on that later.
The Uncle Junior birthday bash.
Uncle Junior birthday bash turning 50, coming in at the end of the year. You got about 11 more months. But yeah, man, I just think that couples shouldn't keep score. And I say that because that was something that I did. And even in early on in this relationship, me and Shell been together almost 11 years. I kept score early on. I don't anymore. I do because I want to do. I give because I value her and I want to give. Anybody who I give because I want to, not because I owe them anything or not because I'm looking for a return, So,
I think the other side to it, if I may add before you move, real
mhm.
quick, just real quick.
Yeah.
I think because I'm gonna go back to the keeping score thing.
Okay.
I think what brought me to the realization that keeping score is wrong is that I was keeping score based upon what I was given, not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily recognizing that that other person was given from the core of their understanding of giving. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the other thing. So during that time, I had a little change in my pocket. I ain't gonna say I was making a lot of money, but I had a little change in my pocket. So
Mm-hmm.
I was given from the excess, right? It
Yeah.
was nothing for me to go out and do this for this person, go, all that great stuff. But that person did not have it. And so
Yeah.
in my mind, like you said, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
Mm-hmm.
8, 9, bro.
Yeah. At some point.
Can a brother get a candy bar and a soda and a pack of nabs? Can a brother do that? I mean,
Yeah.
it's just, just a little.
Mm-hmm.
We need to understand that giving does not always equate to the exchange of money for said good and handing over to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
Giving also equates from the thing that that person has put time, energy, and effort into and is giving it to you because they're desiring to help make you a better person without anything in return. That is a huge aspect of giving. Some people miss that, especially within the relationship, husband and wife. Some people miss that. And I'm just going to use this as an example and I'm going to get off of it.
Okay.
If, and I'm just, pardon the example, don't think too much into the example, just take it as it is. A preacher who is a minister of a church, his first ministry is to his wife.
Mm-hmm.
So every sermon that he is teaching them, she should already know it prior to him teaching that sermon. Now, part of her knowing it is her receptivity of what he's teaching. And I'm going to save that for another day.
I like it. Look, I really like that one. We need to come back to that one day. This one I want to jump on real quick. We're not going to do actual advice, and then we're going to do one, maybe two scenario questions, and then we're going to wrap it up for the night, folks. But before we do, go ahead and hit that like button, that share button, um, all of that other good stuff. So, Coach, real quick, I'm gonna hit a couple. You hit a couple, and then we jump on to this other one. What are some common in chat? Throw in one or two while you at it. What are some common red flag behaviors of toxic or messy relationships?
The expression of unfiltered emotions.
Mm,
That's the big one. That's a huge one. The inability to regulate your emotions in the space of relationship.
mm.
I thought we was just gonna go back and forth.
Whew. That's a good one. I like how you worded it. That's why I was stuck on that. I like how you worded it. Ineffective communication is another one.
I like it.
Um,
Believing that I'm supposed to be who you are.
only loving me the way my love language says I'm supposed to be loved.
Mm. See, that was below the belt, bro. That was deep right there. That was deep.
The
That-
comment, they about to eat me up, man. Don't eat me up too bad over there, folks. This is like we say over on Friday night. I'm gonna say it over here. Me and Coach, we are the master of our own opinions. If you don't agree with us, that is fine and dandy.
absolutely.
You can feel free to tune us off. But with that being said, social life or love life, which one you want?
Either or. I'm good
All
for it all. Let's go.
right. Love life. Here we go. Here's a scenario, folks. Your partner feels neglected due to your busy schedule. How do you make time and reconnect?
Um, Going based upon the question, how do you make time and reconnect? Because I got some questions about the first half.
Mm-hmm.
um, by recognizing that the relationship that I'm in is a meaningful relationship first and foremost. My busy schedule, and I'm just going to equate this to my job. My job is not my number one priority. My job is just the means that I use to take care of my family. So if I'm giving more time to my job than I'm giving to my spouse, now by de facto it's going to be that way because of a 40-hour work week, right? But if I'm bringing work home and talking to my spouse about work, now I'm going beyond the 40 plus hours. My spouse may not necessarily want to hear about the ins and outs of my job, especially when I spend so much time with my job. When I get home, leave the job at work and focus my attention on my spouse because that's me making time and reconnecting. Go out and do something together, like go eat dinner, right? Have talks, meaningful conversations, not just run of the mill conversations about nothingness. Have meaningful conversations so that you guys can reignite the spark that once brought you guys together. Get back to dreaming together, which is one of the things that people, I don't know, they dream in the beginning, then they lose the desire to dream. There's a child in you that is desiring to come out, not the child that expresses raw emotions, but the child that has the ability to dream without being infected by the outside world. That person still exists in you. In the space of relationship, go back to dreaming together. Find out what this person is thinking about, what the future looks like for you guys together. You're indirectly planning the future without even realizing it. Dream together. I think that's huge. That's what I mean
Mm,
when I say have meaningful conversations. Um,
I like
and I think within the space of doing those things, if she still feels neglected, I'm saying if she still feels neglected, if he still feels neglected, it's because they're choosing to.
it. Mm. Your partner feels neglected due to your busy schedule. How do you make time and reconnect? Like you said, if this is a meaningful relationship or relationship that matter, then for me, I think that you have conversations and you plan and you figure out, like it says, how do you make time? You make time. I know Coach has his things about time, but and um, for us other folks who hadn't grasped that whole concept yet, or still using different words, um, I think that that's what you have to do. You have to make time. You come up with a plan. Excuse me. You have a conversation. You come up with a plan, and you figure out. All right, this is y'all come to some agreements on what that looks like going forward. Maybe you schedule more dates. Maybe you spend more time going to church. Whatever it is y'all do together, dreaming, like Coach said, all of those things above. So I think those are some of the things you do right there. The last one, and then we are out of here is social life. Here we go. Close friend betrays you. This we are assuming based off of this that we're not going to assume it. In this situation, based off the conversation for today, this is a relationship that matters to you. A close friend betrays your trust. How do you rebuild the connection, if at all?
Um, I kind of gave a blueprint to it earlier, right? If that brother trespass against you, rebuke him. Go to him and have a conversation. That's for starters. If they repent, if they accept accountability based upon what you shared with them, if they repent, forgive them. I think that's the way to it. I think there's no way around that. But I also go back, I think part of the thing that can be understood in that conversation that takes place is the betrayal piece. Because
Mm,
sometimes what I've learned is that what one person believes betrayal is not really betrayal. It's really where their source of information came from, right? Who said what and for what reason and so forth and so on. And then when you ask yourself certain questions like, why would this person share this with me or whatever the case may be, I think we'll understand some other things. So betrayals now look different because betrayal can be that this person may was having a conversation, whatever the case may be, but it can also be that this person here was only sharing it for a particular reason. And if this person was sharing it for a particular reason, I'm often curious about why they share it. So it's not
mm,
just the information that comes to me, it's the source of information and the why, right? Before I even go to close friend that betrays me. Sure, I owe my friend, because they're a friend, this conversation. But now that prevents me from going with this going to this friend with an aggressive posture. Because when I go to said friend with an aggressive posture to have said discussion, I'm not looking for a connection. I'm not looking to rebuild the connection. I'm looking for answers. I'm
Mm.
looking for you to get on trial and answer the questions of the lawyer, which is me, and then get the judgment from the judge, which is me. So that's my point. Go back and analyze betrayal. Ask yourself the necessary questions. And again, that's if somebody gave me information, and then get
Yeah.
to the point of having that conversation to rebuild a connection.
Man, I like that answer, and I have enjoyed today's episode, man. I've enjoyed this podcast, man. It's been a good one, man. You got anything else to say before I close us out?
No, man, I think this is a great conversation. Obviously, it's one that we can continue going on and on
Hmm.
for a long period of time with, but that's why we're the coaches, right? So, that being said, does anybody hear this? If anybody who's listening to this got more questions, reach out, connect with us so we can help like make sense of it for your life, in your life, and maybe help rebuild relationships that you find meaningful. And that's it.
Absolutely. There you go, folks. And with that being said, we will see y'all again next Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are out.